So Frank, you and I had the opportunity to work together at a local construction company and present some material on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tell me a little bit about how this all came about.
Well, what came about was a local construction company was having some situations that they had tried to address in a normal fashion, like you normally would address them. And it was very, I guess what you would say is, finger waving. And it just didn't go over well because the construction industry is a industry where people have to be independent and be able to make decisions. So when people come forward and wave their finger, in their mind, they're saying, hold on, I'm in charge of this big building over here, and now you're going to tell me what I'm doing wrong. So, or you're higher than me. And what happened is they realized that maybe they would want to come at it because that didn't work from a different way. So they approached Elevate to see what Elevate could create for them. And Elevate got in touch with me. They got in touch with you. They got in touch with a few other members. And we put our heads together to come up with a game plan that would particularly address this situation and others at the same time.
So what did they like about you in particular? What was it that really kind of resonated with them?
Well, one of the things is I'm a blue collar worker. I'm a retired New York City detective. I've seen unions, the whole idea. I'm able to relate to them in their words and in their understanding because of that. And also during my time at 9/11, I spent a lot of time on the pile or at ground zero and getting to understand the construction industry. And even though construction and law enforcement are different, they are very similar in aspects when you talk about decision making and also responsibility. In both industries, you have to make decisions and you have to be responsible for your decisions.
That's great, Frank. And I think your story really did resonate well with them. So how did you go about preparing for this? It was that you had to do 2 1-hour they weren't really presentations, right? They were it was more conversational, but how did you go about preparing for it?
Well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to tell my story, and understanding the situation that they had was easier for me to come up with a strategy or something from my own journey that I could bring forth that was relatable to them and that they could fully understand. And then I brought in aspects of what helped me understand the errors that I might have made along my journey, and then I can offer them to them as a tool. And that's one of the things. They're in the construction industry, they know tools. So if I can give them one very simple tool to work that doesn't have a big instruction panel, it's very simple, and it just helps them get in touch with their own user manual themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is very important. To be able to understand yourself, then you can understand other people. And it was like we really didn't want it to seem like it was they were going to a program, right? So No.
You and I got together, and
Correct. Yeah.
My background is having delivered a lot of different types of story-based work. That being my background in theater and performing arts, we wanted to create like a closeness. So you and I kind of worked together. We created a structure. The
Correct.
structure for us was to really get your story to come alive, have it be engaging. So you and I worked on that.
Well, we worked on different situations, and you being from the theater group, I was able to offer you different things that happened in my tenure and my career as a police officer to see what was relatable and what isn't relatable. And we went through those things and we picked a couple of specific things that were just, so relatable. We didn't even realize how relatable they were until we actually started talking about it. It was a very, I know we had our own little emotional parts when we were going through it, because that's really what it was. It was,
well, I remember when we were talking about 9/11, we both had, I didn't have as intense experience as you, but I had fairly intense experience close after 9/11, about a month after. And so that is so relatable. And then we were looking and said, we need to get them to share their experiences. So then we divided this, we divided the session into 3 parts. First, your story, for them to really listen to something very compelling, and then get them to share their own stories with each other. And then that invitation worked incredibly well. And we'll talk about a little bit about the type of story. And then the last section was giving them a tool that they could take away, think about, put into practice.
Yeah. Something to put into their toolbox, but only their human toolbox instead
so
of
the story that you got them to share. Can you remind me of what the story was that you asked them to share?
Yeah, it's very funny. What happened to me is a couple of months early. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was you that was explaining groupthink, and I'm always looking to learn new things, and it just so happened that I had a very relatable story about groupthink, where what happens is even knowing the consequences of going along with groupthink, we go along with it. And we go along with it because we want to be part of the tribe.
Even when it goes against something that we know inside
is wrong,
is wrong, or it goes against one of our values, right?
Correct. Or if it goes against, and that's usually from what I read up on it, it usually goes against people's values, because what happens with groupthink is everybody wants to be liked and everybody wants to be part of the group. And we go through that, and then they explained and they shared with us their times when they fell into groupthink.
Right.
And some of them knew about it and some of them didn't know about it. I would say this much: the heads that were going up and down, you could see they were now becoming enlightened about certain aspects. And it really was an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, so you watched as they started to almost build a self-awareness in the moment when they were either sharing their story or listening to someone else's story, and all of a sudden realizing that, wow, they really did have that experience when they went along for the ride and they knew they shouldn't. Tell us a little bit about the tools that you gave them. This is a really interesting and powerful tool that you offered to them.
So some years back, I went through some changes while I was on the police force, and I was introduced to a book called The 4 Agreements. Mm-hmm. And very simply, the 4 agreements is to be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personal, don't make assumptions, and to try your best at the other 3, knowing that your best is going to be different day to day. And when we went into it, it was, to me, it was amazing, because again, you could see the heads going up and down, because they were understanding where, I don't know if they were understanding where they were wrong or where they were right. I just knew that they were understanding, and they were understanding.
You gave them an opportunity to reflect on their own behavior, giving them a framework where they could evaluate their behavior from the inside out. And I think that's a really valuable tool.
It really did. And then it tied into my experience from when I first introduced myself, and I told them about my personal story and things that had happened to me and what happened and how they happened and how I became aware of these things.
Right.
And it was very relatable and very open and honest. The discussions and some of the things that we discussed were amazing.
Well, Frank, I really appreciate working with you. I know that the company was very happy with the response that they got from the two groups. There were about 25 people in each one.
Yes, I would so.
And I remember when we walked into the space and they wanted to set us up on tables. And I remember from my theater experience, so that you don't want anything in between you and your audience. And so we put the tables off on the side. We created a nice theater style, kind of almost like a semicircle. And that really seemed to draw people in. When they walked into the room, they were like, kind of like, okay, what's going on? And after 10 minutes, they were totally engrossed in what was going on.
Yes, they were. And even though the back of the room was glass, you know, very
had
amazing.
No idea.
The whole back of the room was glass.
Yeah.
Didn't make a difference.
They didn't feel self-conscious at all. They were
No.
that's because it was so important to them. And that's the power of stories. Frank, I know that they're going to continue to find value, and we're hoping that other companies can see that there's real value in this approach, and we're happy to engage in those conversations with them. Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
We'll talk again soon.